Hey guys, I'm out today. I'm finally getting out of the house a little bit. I'm going on a little bit of a hike on the back side of my property and a couple of the neighbors' properties. And anyways, I'm going to go find a spot, and I got a couple traps that I want to do some videos on. So just hang in there, and we're going to go find a couple places to hang out. So this is like really dense in here. I'm kind of like trying to videotape myself and walk at the same time, but there's a highway off to my south and some farmlands everywhere else. I'm in a little patch of woods, and I'm gonna set up here and go ahead and do a trapping video or two and try to stay out of the poison ivy too. Okay, so the first trap I want to show you is, is the figure 4 deadfall trap, which is pretty easy to do, and I'll show you how to carve it out and set it. Okay, well, carving this trap is relatively simple. I'm going to carve it out of a piece of green wood. I would rather carve it out of dry wood, but you know, it's what I have right now, and I'm going to use it. Usually it's summertime anyways. By the time I get ready to use these triggers, it'll be fall and they'll be dry anyways, but green triggers can sometimes be a little sticky and they'll stick on you once in a while, so you're better off to wait till they dry. But for the sake of the video and the easier carving, we're going to carve them out of the green, and let me get everything ready and I'll show you how it works. Okay, so first thing you need is a good sharp knife. I like the Mora Classics. You could use whatever you want. There's only 3 components to a figure 4 deadfall, other than the weight itself that you're going to use. And typically, I set these up for stuff like squirrels and chipmunks and mice and rats. So they don't have to be too tall, and they'll work just fine. So the first component only has a wedge shape on the top, and then I square off the bottom half of it. The second one has a notch here and another wedge there, and then the third one, which is sometimes a little trickier, has a number 7 notch there and a number 7 notch there. And then you could put a point on here on this end, or you could put a groove and tie a little string to it and tie the bait on there. It depends on what you want to do. I just put a point on there just because I did. You know, I'm actually thinking about using these for rabbits this winter, and I'll probably take a chunk of apple or something and spear it on there and then tie it a little tighter. So let's get started on this, and I'll show you how it works. The first one I usually carve is, I carve this piece first, and it's relatively simple. You just carve your little, I usually work right off the end of the stick. The end of it, I square it off a little bit. First thing I do is I just carve the little notch, and nothing has to be exactly perfect, because you can adjust this as you, when you get ready to set the trap, you can adjust some of these notches. So I just make 2 cuts in this, and it's probably out of focus. I just make 2 cuts in this, and then opposite the 2 cuts, I usually just give it a snap, and it snaps it out. And then all you gotta do is clean these up a little bit. I usually clean the top up a little too. And like I said, you're better off using dry wood. But when this dries, it'll be just fine and it'll work out just fine. You might have to clean up your notches a little bit here and there, but it'll be okay. And then I just go and I clean up the bottom of it so it's nice and flat and square, and then there your first piece is basically done, except for this part, which I'll show you what I do there here in a second. Because anyways, put this piece aside. And the next piece you need is this other short piece, which is basically the same piece, only instead of just this notch on the top, you got a number 7 notch here. And this piece is the piece that pivots on here, like so. So you just do the same thing. I just cut another number 7. I'm trying to make sure my branches are somewhat straight too. I think we'll actually get rid of this. No, you know what, that'll probably work. And you just square this up and clean it up just like you would the last one. And I don't usually worry about the bark too much. So that's done, except for the little wedge in here. And I try to do it so that it is just a little ways down from here, but we're going to square this up first. This is where this is what actually holds the stone up. And since that's like that, I usually put a little flat on the top of this. If this is not necessary, it's just something I do like that. That way when it's sitting like this, the stone will sit a little flatter on there. And then you put a little notch in it right here. Just like that. And this notch may end up having to be a little deeper or maybe a different angle, but you can play with that after you get it set up. So now we got this part and this part, which is a little too short actually. Let's redo that one, make it a little longer. I didn't realize I did that. Okay, so do the same thing. It's okay, this is good for carving. Like I said, just like anything else, you kind of play with these until you get them right. Once you get a few sets right, you can keep them for a very long time because they don't go bad. Get rid of that, that's not the one we want. Okay, so we got that like that. This goes in here. Put this about right there. You want to make sure that when you put the little notch in here, that it's lined up with this notch in the, or with this wedge shape in the back. That's probably gonna have to be a little bit deeper, but there's the gist of it, about like that. I will fix that right now. Okay, so now we got the first two pieces done, and they sit like that. So now all we need is that number 7, that piece with the 2 number 7s that go across here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to square this one off, take some off this side, some off this side, and some off this front side, just to give it some nice some place to really grab onto the number 7 notch with. And it doesn't have to be fancy. But I don't make it a perfect square. When I do it, I leave these outside corners just a little bit rounded. And I do that because it makes it just a little bit more sensitive. So now we got that and that. I need to square this off a little bit here too. I'm going to go ahead and I'll square this end off. I should have did that before, but I didn't. Like so. So now we got this. Oh, let me do this one too. So now you got this piece that looks like that, and this is perfectly square all the way around. So now we need to find something to make the number 7 notch out of. We want something that's kind of long and kind of straight. Something that's not so too flexible. This right here might work. Nothing has to be fancy. I'll just go ahead and make that in my point end. And like I said, you don't have to put a point on there. You could put a groove on there if you want, and a little string, and tie your bait on. There's all kinds of different things you can do with the end of this. I just put a point on it just for demonstration purposes. Then I usually take it and I set my 2 pieces up like so, and I kind of try to figure about where I want this to be. So I know I want a notch all the way back here on the back. And this stick will depend on the length of it, will depend on how far you want to get the animal underneath the trap too. The longer the stick is, and the farther you can get him back into the back of that trap, the better off you'll be. So I got that number 7 trap, that number 7 notch there, which will sit in here just like this. So now I just need to put a number 7 notch over here, which would be right about here. And it'll be 90 degrees from your other notch. This notch right here needs a little bit of adjustment. And right there is how it sits. You can't really see that on my leg. Adjust this a little bit. Like I said, you can adjust these notches a little bit to make them a little bit more sensitive. And I can tell already that this one's going to be too sensitive because I don't have a square enough notch here, corner here. So we'll just fix that. It's got to have something to sit on. If it doesn't sit on something, it'll set itself off in a good wind. And right there's the way it sits. So let's set this thing up and I'll show you how it works. And I'll be right back. Okay guys, so here it is all set up. You can see I got that stick in there just as far as I can, and I got bark on each side of this. That way, once that mouse gets in there a certain amount of ways, he can't go out but out the front of the trap. So he's going to have to actually like turn around and run all the way out. And usually by then the trap is falling on him. So all it is the mouse goes in there like so, and touches the trigger, and boom, he's down. So let's set this thing up and I'll show you how it sets. Okay, so what I do is I take my two pieces and I set these up just like so, my two pivoting pieces, and I hold it right here and I let it pivot right here in my hand. And I just hold this up. This is so you don't smash your fingers. And I got a little piece of bark that the stick sits on so it doesn't sink into the ground. And then you set up your number 7 and try to do it so that it isn't going to fall over on you. And this thing's super sensitive. Which is what you kind of want. Okay, so now it's set. So the only other thing I do is I take the bark, put it around the trap in a way so that it doesn't interfere with the way it falls. And normally I would put more bark than this around it. I'd block this whole side totally in. That way the mouse could only come in through here, over here. You have to go in all the way through here and go all the way back to the trap and set it off. This side I usually block all the way in, but we're just demonstrating this. So now that you're set, you're set. And then the little mouse, you want to block this in because you want the mouse to come from this side, if possible, because your trigger stick's on that side. That way when he comes from this side, if he touches it, it'll go off. And that's the whole idea behind it. You want it to go off and not be sticky. Well, anyway, so there's a quick little video on how to do a figure 4 deadfall trap, which I've been kind of practicing a lot on my deadfall snares and stuff, or my deadfall traps and my snares and stuff, because I've got some projects coming up that I'm actually going to have to use them on. And hopefully I'll get a chance to do them in real life. But there you go, it's all set up. And like I said, if the trap was bigger, you'd want to make everything a little taller, a little longer. And if the trap was deeper, you'd want to make this stick, whoops, the stick that just fell, you'd want to make it a little bit longer to reach farther back in this thing. The farther you can get this bait on the end of the stick back into the trap, the better off you are. And the other thing you want to do is kind of block the sides of the trap, but block them in a way so that they don't interfere with the way that the heavy weight's going to fall. And I just used a half a piece of stump. If I was in a situation where there was no rocks, that would be perfect. You know, I usually always have some kind of saw with me or axe, and you could chop a couple logs and split them in half, and there you go, you got a couple weights, and you can lean other things against it to even put more weight on it. And depending on how big the log is and long and wide would depend on what kind of game you're going to get with it. So just remember that the bigger the game, the heavier the weight. And I don't quote me on this, but I think it's 5 times the weight of the actual piece of game that you want to kill. So if you got a 10-pound squirrel, you want a 50-pound weight. Well, yeah, if you see a 10-pound squirrel, you're doing pretty good. But anyways, so that's how you do a deadfall trap, and I will post this video as soon as I can. If you like it, like, share, and subscribe, and thank you.